these little collage elements, I'm just going to first show you, like, how do I put this into my painting. So this is kind of a boring painting, but it's just a little demo board for you. If you have a light background, like we've already discussed, your collage element, it's already been pre-waxed.
So we're putting this down on something, on a board
That has wax on it.
that has wax.
Yeah, correct. So this is your built-up surface. It could be, you know, something more complicated, like one of the demo. I don't have one on hand right now. One of the demos that you worked on yesterday, those 4 panels that we built up with the different kinds of collage. That'll give you something to work with and work against while you practice this. So basically, when you want to incorporate a waxed element into the encaustic surface, it's good if you haven't worked on the painting for a while. You want to definitely have some medium behind it. So you want to heat it up just a little bit, not to the point where it's melting, but just, you know, kind of activate it again. Just so it's kind of warm to the touch, a little sticky. And then you can just kind of start going to town. Like, you can start layering stuff on here. You will need to have parchment paper. Remember when I said the other day that you're going to start using this a lot and this a lot? Every layer you're going to be burnishing and fusing and then burnishing back in. Now, when deciding what kind of papers to use and where to put them, like really heavy papers, I will say they don't always lay down as flat all the time. So I've gone more to the thinner papers, and then even the inkjet, that's why we sand it on the back a little bit so it just integrates in a little better. You want to be a little mindful of your edges. The edges are always susceptible to breaking and pulling up a little bit. So maybe you want to start with some very small elements just for practice that you burnish into the wax. So I'll start with this. You can cut up whatever you want. Just go ahead. Cut this up and try and get something going here. Other tools for cutting, I use my utility knife a lot, your X-Acto. I mean, you can cut the inside, you know, inside of the form. You can do silhouettes, whatever you want. Just think, what would I do with regular paper? I can still do it here. I have this little hole punch tool. This can be kind of fun. If you want to borrow it, just let me know.
And you've already got wax on that yellow paper.
Yes, this is already waxed. Yep. That's why we spent all that time this morning getting stuff ready. And this is the point usually in my own practice when I don't even turn my griddle on anymore. I just leave it off and then I start messing around with stuff. So you figure out where you want it to go.
Some of these are only waxed on one side. In that case, do you flip it over and use the side?
Yeah, whenever you're
down?
waxing something, I make sure the entire piece of paper is infused from top to bottom. So you place it where you want it. If you decide you don't like where it is, you can peel it up. Again, I love this because you don't have to commit right away. And you can move it around. And take your parchment paper, take this, and you're just going to burnish it right down into the surface. So if you have a smooth surface, this will go on really easily. And you shouldn't have any problems after that. If you have a rough surface, those air pockets underneath might cause a few problems later, but you can just smooth that out. So this is stuck on there pretty well. It's still not fused. Usually I'll leave it at this point, but when you are ready to fuse it, just grab a heat gun.
And because it's already waxed, you don't need to put more stuff on top.
You will need to at the ends, just to make sure it stays in there. So just fuse it, and then I always burnish it again. So let's say you want to combine a couple of layers.
Excuse me, did you see this?
Ruler, I'm always doing this. So let's say I want to put a little wedge of this in there. So you're going to start using this sandwich of parchment paper, your waxed elements, and then parchment on top. So if I want to combine these two, and I know that I want to make, this is how these little critters started coming about in my studio. So these are these little freeform things. So you can put them together, and there's enough wax on there that they'll tack together nicely. And you could do 2 or 3 layers, especially with something thin like the tissue paper. I'm losing my words. And just burnish them together. This. And then you've got, they're pretty stuck together. You decide you don't like it, you can carefully peel them apart, but they're not going anywhere. There's enough. And then at the very end, I fuse them with my tacking iron because they're freeform.
So these aren't burnished on the board, these are just sandwiched.
Yeah, these are just sandwiched together. And I'm not using heat yet. Heat is like the final, the final thing that you do. But I could keep building on this and slicing and dicing it and reconfiguring it if I wanted to. So you start to get some really interesting. And this is where it gets really fun for me, and it is different from working with regular paper. So now I've got this in 2 pieces, and I could throw another little element into it. Oops. If something tears, you can usually put it back together pretty easily. Burnish it. It's kind of warm in here, so your stuff will stick to the parchment a little bit. It makes it a little easier for it to all stick together. So you start getting stuff like this, and then these can go onto your painting surface. I have no idea what to do with this. I'll just stick it on here. And you would do the same. You'd burnish it, and then fuse it, and then add a little bit of medium, like glue, and then you can start adding